Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting edition of the podcast, Two Men in Black and White and Honest Conversation. All right, my partner in crime, Brockton Ellis, aka B Rock, the Uptown Point God, joining us live from the Hudson Valley, beautiful Hudson River Valley. My name is Mark Hayes. I'm also your co-host on this train ride, this roller coaster ride through Trump 2.0. I'm located in the dirty, right outside ATL, shouty. All right, Brock, let's get right into it. As we come on the air, 5:35 Eastern Time, Wednesday, April 16th, the Dow has fallen again, tumbling from the rafters. And, then we got some economic news forecasters saying tourism gonna take a real blow because folks are gonna stay away from the good old US of A. Why would they do that, Brock?
Man.
Why would people not want to come to the US of A?
I'm wondering like who is gonna come? But I guess
Exactly.
the dollar's so weak that some people may be like, wow, what a great time to go to US and bring my euros and like or my and live large or larger than I
Right.
would have previously. I mean, some are gonna do it at it or aren't gonna come out of fear, and probably more aren't gonna come just out of principle.
Right.
Just like, you know what, the little war they can fight is not to come here and spend money here and in essence help the US economy. So I think
Right.
I think that's probably more of it than anything else. It's just like it's a statement. They're like, get your shit together.
It's like Canada. I mean, what we've seen is how all these other nations have band together within their borders, right? Unlike the USA, which is divided over racism, right? No place else is as prolific a racist, systemic racist system. I mean, we could go to South Africa and apartheid, but no place else is as prolific as the US with its mass incarceration, its systemic racism, and its educational and wealth inequities. I mean, there's just no place else on earth that you can find it so blatantly and where people will tell you it doesn't exist. But what I'm concerned about with some of these economic forecasts is the unemployment level, right? The jobless claims are going to shoot through the roof, and it's all self inflicted. It's all due to these tariffs.
Well, I mean, it's going to have to, right? As businesses I mean, United Airlines came out and literally went on an earnings call and gave two forecasts, right? What they think their business would be in a normal economy, and then what would happen to it if we go into a recession, which is kind of a joke, right? Because that's sort of like every company just saying, like, we have no fucking idea what's going to happen. So the numbers could be this, or that, depending
Right.
on how the wind blows. But like what they're really trying to say tiptoeing around Trump is that basically we know we're going to go into recession, but when our numbers look shitty, don't blame us because it's the other guys that ruin the economy because our business would have been doing great otherwise. But it's just kind of just a fool's game
Right.
it's like let's talk about life as if Trump didn't exist, and now let's talk about real life of what it's
Right.
really going to be.
Right. And basically what they're saying is, we want to show you what would happen if we were on the side of the people.
Yeah.
We were with you, but we're not with you. So we're going to show you what it would look like otherwise.
So
It's a
yes,
joke. It's a
unemployment
joke.
is coming, right?
Right.
Because the first way the companies tighten the belt, just like the first thing Doji did, right, was fire people, is the first thing corporate America is going to do
Yep.
is they're going to fire people first because it's the quickest savings. And I don't know when we're going to get numbers that are going to really reflect that, in a big way, but they're coming. It might take to the beginning of May to get like the April number, in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Assuming Trump's team's not going to try to manipulate the numbers, right? Then you're going to have to question the trust of what you're going to see. But Paul Powell went out and warned the business community about the tariffs are going to lead to inflation and it's going to lead to lower growth and they're going to try to manage it at the Fed. But there's only
Yeah.
so much they can do.
Well, exactly. And, the frustrating part about all this is that the people that we pay to represent us are lying to us. Marjorie Taylor Greene showed up actually showed up. I'm pretty sure it was her. It looked like her from the back. That she showed up at a town hall and just lied to people's faces. Yeah, I'm not seeing what you guys are seeing. I mean, literally, that's what she was saying. I've never seen any signs of fascism. Really? Really? But you were just omnipotent enough to know to purchase stocks right before they shot through the roof and make all that money. She's worth like $22 million now.
Well, hopefully she didn't hold on for her sake. She didn't hold on to the stocks too long, right? Because that
Right.
was the shortest rally in Wall Street history, also.
Right.
All right, so the economy is in a free fall. It's tanking. We're going to start seeing the numbers. We're going to start seeing the layoffs. The reason why this will be a steady stream is because this is what's known as earnings season on Wall Street. First quarter ended. You get a couple weeks past it, and you start getting the bigger companies start reporting. Really, the next 2 weeks, you're going to see a lot of companies reporting their quarterly numbers, which won't have been that bad because
Right.
the tariffs hadn't kicked in. Like Q1 was probably, quote, solid. But in terms of the outlook, you're going to have CEOs giving, playing the United Airlines game of just saying they have no visibility on where things are going
Right.
because they don't yet know. But all they know is the consumer confidence is horrendous. Interest rates are up, their stock price is way down, and their cost of doing business just skyrocketed.
Skyrocketed.
So you
Yep.
got four negatives for you before they can even get into talking about anything else in their business.
Yeah, so let's talk about what that means, right? People aren't buying homes, right? People aren't buying cars. People aren't going out and buying luxury items. They're not making any kind of purchase that is not deemed as necessary. And that slows
Everything
everything
down.
down.
Yeah. Every business,
Right.
every industry, every business, so the pain is going to be widespread. I mean, this is going to be a deep, ugly recession. It's all going to lay right in Trump's lap. And that's why they're all in lying mode, right? Because they're going to try to gaslight their way through it because they're telling people that this is the short-term pain we need to bring all this manufacturing back to America. And, this is all the make America great again. But the number of job losses that are going to happen in between, Americans aren't patient. I just don't see how they pull it off because telling
No.
Americans to be patient or telling people who just lost a paycheck not to be upset about it or who can't afford the groceries that they're going to be okay. And on the side, you're talking about cutting their health care too. Like, I mean, I don't know how they're going to pull it off,
Right.
but they're trying every day.
And
Yeah.
remind me again, Brock, why we needed to do this. Why did we need this short-term pain? Because I keep saying it over and over again, but wasn't America's economy the envy of the globe in December and 2.5 weeks through January?
We didn't have to look. Doji is going to go down as like one of the worst ideas in American history,
Got
right?
it.
Like there'll be a day where they look back on Doji and just be like, how the fuck did America allow that to happen? Right? Because there is more bad news we'll get to in a second, right? Relative to the National Labor Relations Board. But even in the day to day of it's hurting the farmers, it's hurting. I mean, it's just the pain that's been inflicted by Doji. And when they tally up the numbers, government spending was up in Q1. Musk has basically no cost saving record even to show for
Right.
all this carnage. Like it's almost like the least effective huge program ever.
It's sad. It really is sad because I think we're in the red in terms of spending versus cost savings with the Doji cuts. So, I mean, what was the purpose? And now we've eliminated, like adolescent cancer research at the University of Michigan program for 750K.
Today,
Right?
they eliminated volunteers who were working on homes that had been destroyed in catastrophes.
See?
Volunteers.
Right.
Like, I guess we couldn't afford to buy them like a ham sandwich for lunch, right? So
Right.
they had to get cut to save like, $8.25 on the side, right? But we're not rebuilding homes that got flooded.
Right.
So, that program's gone. Sorry about those people. You can sleep in a tent for another, 6 months.
And what's the deal in California? Who's helping? What government programs are helping replace those homes that were lost in the fire that could have been avoided? Like who is on the hook for that? Like what are those thousands of Americans supposed to do in the most expensive housing market in the country?
So we're seeing people showing up in droves again in Montana for Bernie and AOC. In essence, going right at Musk, right? So like this is as much as an anti-Doji, anti-Musk crusade, right? It's anti-oligarch, but it starts with Musk. And it's all these white people out there screaming and yelling as they did at Chuck Grassley yesterday. So like we can feel the sentiment in the country has changed. When you have white people in Iowa getting up and yelling at 99-year-old Chuck Grassley that he needs to go save a Latino guy from Maryland
Maryland,
from a
right?
death camp in El Salvador, you're like, whoa, sentiment has really, really changed.
Hmm.
Sadly, 3 weeks ago, we still had the same fucking vote in Florida, right? They still went out and voted for Republicans. So, like, we certainly haven't reached the tipping point yet. But the sentiment, the feel around the country is different. Like,
Completely changed.
everybody's fucking unhappy for 1,001 different reasons. And they're
Right,
not buying the MAGA shtick and gaslighting as much as they used to,
right,
right? It's
right,
chipped away a little bit.
right.
Still not manifesting as big action on the left, though.
No, not at all. And let's get to you mentioned Senator Van Hollen going down to El Salvador to try to bring back Mr. Garcia. How ironic is it that a senator has to say, well, you know what, if our cabinet is not going to take on this responsibility, I might as well do it and go and get my constituent because nobody else seems to want to help us. And you're going around the President of the United States, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, right? The most visible officials, right, in the cabinet to go and try to bring back a man who they admitted they mistakenly removed from the country.
But now they're lying and saying he's a gang leader. Then
Right,
they even threw in that maybe he was human trafficking. Like they're just making shit up, right?
right,
But it's even in. I'm sure there's like a 10 or 20% of the country over in MAGA world is eating that shit up and saying, "Yeah, I'm glad this got this guy out." But
right,
most people are even questioning, like, "Huh? Now he's a human trafficker?" Like, just every day he gets worse. Pretty soon he's gonna be a mass murderer. But interesting, Van Hollen was not able to meet him or was not allowed to meet him. And so now I guess he's gonna have to fly on a plane back home, not having achieved his goal of seeing Kilmer Abrego alive. But what it's done is now it's triggered the storyline of where is he? Is he alive? So the media story stays, and it stays in the face of Trump and MAGA. Because I
right,
think the reason why they didn't just bring him home is they were afraid of the negative news cycle because it would have been a big homecoming and a lot of interviews. In essence, just would have made him look bad, right?
right,
They would have looked bad for several days.
right, right,
And now I think they're going to look bad for several days anyway, because now people are going to start going, where is he? How do we know he's alive? We need proof of life.
right, right. And that's probably what his family is saying, right? Because this guy was established in the community, known in the community, right? This wasn't some dude just off the street gang banging, right? This was a man who was trying to live out the dream.
Yeah, he was
And
in the
now this
union, right? He's
guy's,
sheet metal. He was like a sheet metal apprentice. He was learning the
yeah,
trade. He was doing another one of those shitty jobs that white America doesn't want to do, right?
exactly, exactly. And now we don't even know, and that's a great point. We don't even know if he's alive. We haven't seen him, haven't seen any pictures. You would think if they were smart, if El Salvador was smart, they would have at least put out a picture of him, put out his mugshot when they checked him in, because we don't know what kind of record keeping goes on down there.
Nothing.
We don't know anything,
So Van Hollen went to El Salvador and couldn't even get proof of life. So
right?
I don't know if he's going to stay till he gets it or if he's coming back home, but we don't even have proof of life for this guy. And that will keep the story going because now everyone's going to want to know, at least know that this guy is okay.
Right, Right. And Brock, I remember a time when our, highly thought of media professionals would be all over this story, would be down in El Salvador trying to figure out exactly what's going 60 minutes, Dateline, somebody would be down there trying to, get to the bottom of
Get
this.
answers, find someone
Nightline.
who's seen him,
Yes.
right? Like, and just
Right.
pressure and pressure and pressure. Um, I mean, the media, 60 Minutes poked the bear, right? Trump wants to pull their license to broadcast now, but hopefully they stand strong in the way, because we've seen that everyone who buckles or capitulates in any way just gets pushed over, right? The law firms that rolled over now are getting additionally bullied. The universities that rolled over are getting, you kind of are getting just pushed around, and Harvard took a stand. Yeah, hopefully CBS just takes a stand and continues to stay on stories that antagonize power, because that's what the media is supposed to do.
Right. Right. Well, in days gone by, right? Yesteryear, but now it's, see, again, we always get back to the greed. It's so good for business that we're going to let it ride. You know why? Because the competition is insane and they can't keep up with YouTube and all these streaming platforms. So they've got to make money any way they can, even if it's off the backs of American citizens, because
Mhm.
they know people are waking up saying, what did this lunatic do today? Let me turn on the news.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
But
Just like COVID.
I'm gonna check the box for Van Hollen, right? White senator going down, and he hasn't made a race a part of it, which I wish he would, right?
Right,
That this is not just a man, this is a Latino man. This is targeted action by the Trump administration. This is not just, random, could have been any man off the street. No, it was pretty clear it was going to be a Hispanic man, off the street. But
right,
when Cory Booker talked for 26 hours and we loved it. Van Hollen, like, he got on the plane, he's down there, and what it does, even if he can't get proof of life or really achieve anything, because he doesn't have the power to make shit happen, he can draw the public's ire. And the public's ire is at least maybe moving the needle a little bit in some ways, in some areas.
well, and like you said the other day, we are in a constitutional crisis right
Yeah,
now.
we're in it right
We're
now.
in it. We're not up to the line. We're over it and beyond. It's out of bounds. We need a criminal contempt
That judge came hard
hearing.
today too. That
He
judge
came
came
with
hard
it.
today, so they're expecting some from DOJ or someone. Oh, it's still going to come down to their enforcement power. There's some scholars that say there's a way around not having, like, the enforcement, the typical enforcement, by doing a civil action, and maybe you can get some different, like, sort of officers of the court to go do something. But we'll see if we get to that. These move the needle a little bit, and to a point where apparently there's some Republican congressmen that don't want to go along with the Medicaid cuts. So, and it doesn't take very
Mm.
many to unwind what they're trying to get done with the budget.
What
So
do they need? Four? What
he
do the
needs
Democrats
four.
need? Like
Supposedly
four?
there's 12 of them. I'm sure we would hate their reasons, but I
Right.
mean, their main reason is self-preservation. But
Right.
so some of these things between Bernie and AOC and Van Hollen and Cory Booker and others piling on, there is, and the courts being pretty aggressive, and the media not totally rolling over, and Harvard standing strong. There are some things that have actually started to line up to feel like there is a resistance
Right.
that's coming together. It's still not cohesive, right? It's like this random resistance that maybe comes together somewhere. We're
Right. And
still
it's
looking
too
for it, right?
soft.
What?
And it's too soft. The resistance right now is too soft for you and I. But I'm thinking, if we get Garcia back home and he tells the story of brutality, systemic use of torture in this prison, any kind of mistreatment, right, that he may have been subjected to, that ignites another flame, right? And so we get another level of outrage, right? With well intentioned, well meaning white America, Black America saying, whoa, that ain't right. And it better not happen to us. So let's get out here and march.
Yeah,
right?
and hopefully then it also trickles to the next person and the next person, right? Who
Exactly.
else has gotten snatched?
Exactly.
And let's go because there are already people talking about that. You got the hairdresser. I think it was not a hairdresser, like or a makeup artist guy who
Right.
like, or the guys with the wrong tattoos, right? So there's
Right.
already people that we're kind of quasi aware of. We don't know their whole story, but we already know kind of their names or their backstory, and we know they shouldn't have been deported. And we certainly know they shouldn't be in an El Salvador jail, right? So,
Exactly.
like, this story, it's funny. You never know which one is going to be what breaks things. And I kept saying it needs to be something visceral that can be videoed. And this one couldn't really be videoed, but for some reason it's captured America's attention. Maybe it's just because the guy's a father and the father being pulled from his family is just so relatable. I'm not sure
Right.
why, but this one, if the angry crowd in Iowa is riled up about this, maybe it's not so much for the person, they're maybe mad about the process as well. But for some reason, this one's caught fire. In my take is like, I don't care why
Right. Right.
it's happened, right?
Right. And that's and yeah, who cares? Who cares why it catches fire as long as it burns and burns hot? Doji didn't do it. Social Security got, some elderly white folks riled up. But, what's going to get young folks, off the couch and off the schneid? We need you young folks out here with that energy, and I thought it might be the snatching of students out of classrooms.
Yeah, I thought maybe that would get other students riled up.
Right, right. But, it still hasn't, kicked them in the ass yet. So we'll see what it takes. But, again, grandma, not being able to make her rent, that might do it. Grandma not getting these checks, not being able to eat, not being able to afford her medication, not being able to pay rent. Maybe that does it. Who knows? But, we'll just have to wait and see. And we'll have to continue to urge people to continue having conversations with people who don't look like them in their neighborhoods and ask them, hey, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? I wouldn't mind having that conversation with a MAGA person right now. Are you okay with this? Right? And if you are, it must be because you haven't been impacted at all. But I know somebody in your family has. And how much do you really care about that person?
It's hard to find anyone who hasn't been impacted at all.
Right, right.
Still kick around trans people. Pritzker was out again, really strong. He's really strong in the LGBTQ support.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and I'm pretty sure like Pritzker's like just a straight guy who's like, so, I mean, it's just out there showing like you don't have to totally identify with the individual to support and give a shit about them and back them in a full throated way.
Right.
I think he's a good leader on that front. I'm still waiting for someone to do what Pritzker's doing in the black community and have a white leader go to the black community and say, hey, I'm pro DEI. I'm
Right.
pro DEI because I believe in opportunity. This is the land of opportunity. And I believe in people getting a fair shot and a fair opportunity. And that makes total sense to me. And that's what I think America's all about. So, like,
Right.
why does anyone have a problem with this? Like, I'm for this. I'm just waiting for some people to start to say that. And I'm also waiting for some people to say, not that they're just mad about deportations because, Trump's not agreeing with the Supreme Court ruling and this is un-American and it's unconstitutional. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's true too. But I want people to be pissed because it's like racist.
Right. Right. It
And it's
totally is. And the more you say it,
a bunch of white ICE guys carting a bunch of brown people into vans and shipping them to a
who knows where?
now where we know we can't even ever hear from them again.
Right. Right. And it is so frustrating that we are here. Right? Because we were I mean, okay, think back to the end of COVID. Right? Like we were like, oh man, we're never gonna be normal again. Is it ever good? Were we ever gonna get back to normal? And here we were, hiding through 2023, 2024, just clipping away. at what looked like a really nice recovery. And all of a sudden, these loonies decide, 78 million people decide we need to take this thing for a nosedive. Like, I will never understand, what led people to pull the lever for him, knowing what he did the first time around. I mean, it is shocking to me. I know he was trying to stay out of jail. I get that part.
Yeah, I know why
But,
he did it. The question is, why did
right.
everyone else do it?
Why
I
did
mean,
everybody
I
else do
think,
it?
my theory's always been this is demographics, and no people in the history of civilization have ever given up power without a fight. And white people, particularly white men, have had power in America since the get-go. And with the demographic changes, as the numbers creep up, as the number of, let's look at the voting base. The Hispanic vote goes up, the black vote goes up, and starts creeping its way to where white people in America, stop becoming an outright majority. And it's
Right.
going that direction, right? It's going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
So that's the sense of the loss of power. And what do you do when you think you might be losing power? You fight back. So in some
Right.
countries, it's militarily. The way it was fought here is through voter suppression, pandering, and the like, way of manipulating voting and then manipulating the rules. And we already had the electoral college, so we already had some things in place that allowed it to happen. And and a massive campaign of trying to get white people to fear the other more than ever, right? It's always been a part of the playbook, but more than ever, that their country was being taken away from them. And to me, it's always been a response to demographic change. And that's where white America went. And now we got to see if there's enough white America that will peel away from that and say, no, I want to be a part of a multicultural, multiracial society. Like, that's what America's all about.
We
We
used
certainly
to,
haven't seen
what we
enough of
thought it
it.
was.
We haven't seen enough of it yet. I don't think. Do you think we've
Right.
seen enough of it yet?
No, hell no. Hell no. Because, and remember, but I'm not asking for much. Right? I know many of my black contemporaries who will be like, nah, hell no, that ain't enough. We need more. But we're not gonna get more. We gotta take what we can get right now and then come back to the table because too many other huge priorities lie in front of us, right? Along with, I believe, systemic racism is a huge problem in this country. But saving the democracy so we can work on breaking down the barriers in
Yeah, yeah. It
systemic
still comes
racism
first.
has to
So
come first.
okay, so we're looking to Saturday. It's another one of the. I don't think Indivisible has really jumped onto these rallies on Saturday, but it's that 50 for 51. It's women's movement.
Right.
There's still a lot of groups involved, and there's a sense that we got to build and build and build. Do you think there will be any more black people out on the streets on the 19th than they were roughly a month ago? Or you think it'll be the same or less?
I think it'll be right around the same. I don't think, they've heard the call yet. There is still a lot of ire, around what's happening because remember, you still have to remember a lot of black people are saying the same thing I'm saying. What was wrong with what we were doing before? What happened to all the progress after George Floyd?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the money that was supposed to be spent on DEI programs after George Floyd? All the goodwill after George Floyd. It's all gone. We're not talking about any of that, and it's due to the election choice that people made,
Yeah.
right? It's all due to that, right? And so what that told black folks, we don't want you around here. We don't want you to be a part of this thing. And then history tells us, if you go back to the Black Wall Street massacre in Tulsa, the last living survivor, just in court trying to get reparations, couldn't get it after they, murderously rampaged a whole town that was all black. Black banks, black hotels, black this, black that, black everything. And you didn't want us to have that. So what do you want? Right? So black folks are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we're tired of people getting unalived in police stops, right? With no weapons on. We're tired of people getting unalived in the penal system, right? Mass incarceration, prison for profit. And so we still have not heard where our presence is needed and respected, right? Because we did what we were supposed to do on November 5th.
Hmm.
83% black men, 92% black women. Like, ain't nobody else performed like that for Kamala, right? And so that's the problem, right? We're having trouble getting past recent history. Ancient history tells us we're in for more of the same.
So do you think okay, so it'll be another, 0.05 for black,
Right.
maybe one out of every and the handful that I saw in New York. Okay, and do you think there'll be more Latinos out there because of what's going on specifically with
Now, that wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me. Seeing some of the Latino marches in Dallas, they've had several very nicely attended marches in the Dallas metro area. That's Jasmine Crockett's area too. And so you've seen them really, really. And what you have in Dallas too is much like South Florida, a very affluent Latino community. They've got some money down there. They do really well in the Dallas metro area in terms of businesses, business ownership, entrepreneurship. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see more Latinos out there
yeah,
voicing their discontent and
I
displeasure.
wonder if in New York we see that as well. And I wonder if
Yeah,
there's going to be more signs on this topic and maybe it's the Latino community that sort of kind of sort of merges in with that old time, that white old timers game crowd
right.
that was the core of the last ones. I mean, I'll be interested to say. I hope the numbers are good. Everything has to build on it on it.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if it was just human decency that brought us all out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
The weather will be warmer too. Yeah,
I have a
just
dream.
you would hope someday, but I don't like to bank on that. But even like I don't it never resonates with me that well when people are always like, "Oh, we need love over hate and this, that, and the other thing."
Right.
Because I'm like asking for love is a little too much. I don't think people have to love each other, but
No,
they sure as hell have to respect each other,
no
right?
doubt.
So okay, you don't have to love your neighbor, but respect your neighbor, right?
Well,
And respect their ability to live a good life also, right? No matter
absolutely.
what they look like, you may or may not like them, right? Like
Absolutely.
we're all not gonna love everybody, but like be compassionate and respect them. And that to
Right.
me, that's what society is supposed to do. That's what governments are supposed to do. Also, is make a playing field where people are sort of you know maybe
Absolutely.
mandating a certain level of respect.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all come down. Like, there is just a total lack of respect in our society these days. Right. I don't see these kinds of videos like we see in America and other countries, where people are just getting pulled over and getting the hell beat out of them, where, people just are rioting at youth, sporting events. I don't see it in other countries, right? Because I know if it was there, we'd see it because everybody has a smartphone now all over the world, right? Why is it here? Right? Why is it just here? Now I get the soccer rumbles and everything. That's a different political conversation, right? I get that. But, just to see a man lose his life at a hockey rink because, he didn't like a call that was made on the ice, somebody has to die. Like, we are so violent. That's why countries have, warnings about coming to the United States, you know, severe gun violence, right? The violence in America should be cause for warning for you to travel, the travel warnings. We don't see that in a lot of places, industrialized nations. It's really sad. Like I said, until we start getting to know our neighbors again, and not just giving them the old wave, we're going to struggle because you can't care about somebody until you get to know them, right? On some level, you have to have a basic understanding, of who people are, what they stand for. It's like, back in the day, man. The only time I ever see families out on the block in my neighborhood is Halloween. And those are the young families, right, with young kids, and the parents are, younger. They're pulling the wagon with both kids in it with their, super duper cute Hollywood Halloween costumes on. But that's the only time you see families out. You don't even see kids playing pickup basketball anymore. Which is sad to me. And we got great courts. I was like, man, if I beat out these courts, growing up, I'd actually been a good player. Because I wanted to go out there and play. But we've got to develop a better understanding of people. And when I do my corporate presentations, that's what I start with. Let's develop a level of understanding of who we manage. Then we can communicate with them, right? Because now you have an understanding of who that person is, what they're doing. You don't know if that person has 2 or 3 generations of their family living with them, right? You don't know what that person's paycheck means to them in their situation, right? Because every family's different, right? And when you think and talk to somebody, you have to understand where they're coming from so you can understand how to motivate them.
So the this ties into that whole thing about where David Hogg was out today saying that the Democrats are going to primary some of their own people because there are middle of the road Democrats. There are a bunch of quotes out today, anonymously about some Democrats grumbling that instead of just being focused on the economy, they were falling, quote, into the trap of talking about these ICE raids and deportations, that this plays into MAGA hands and that they should just stay talking on the economics. And I, of course, think 180 degrees from that. Like, this is the perfect time to be talking about unity and diversity and race and a coming together, and not just saying we have more that in common than that separates us, but talking about what we do have in common, because
Right.
we have the common enemy. So since we're starting with the common enemy, we're already
Right.
on stable ground, right? We're already on ground where we agree on
Right.
something, right? So we're already
Right.
starting an agreement, and now we can really start talking about the vision for the build back, because we're seeing how bad it can be and how much we hate this version of society, right? So all of us hate this version of society, or not all of us. A big part of the country hates this version of society for a lot of different reasons. But it's a
Yes.
great time for people to talk about their different reasons and kind of share in the pain, and then talk about how we come out of it a little bit more, hopefully a lot more together than we were. So to me, this is the perfect time to talk about things like DEI and mass incarceration and cash bail, because these little, the cool little things, they all stack up on top of each other to
Right.
become like this
Become a big thing.
racism, just like all the doji cuts are stacking up on top of each other to totally decimate the core of American, what we thought were American
Yeah.
values. So
Right.
we can talk about everything right now, not just talk about the one thing that we think we can peel off a couple white people in Iowa. They're coming anyway because they're pissed about something we didn't even think they'd be mad about, right?
Right.
We
Right.
can't predict. So I just think it's a wide open playing field and everything should be on the table. And anyone who's like being cautious and trying to say it's just about economics is like, to me, they're just missing the whole fucking boat.
No doubt. No doubt. The
And we
hopes
won't get enough of the
that
masses out on the streets to actually get the change in a
we
time
need.
frame that is survivable for us, because
Right.
it's not 4-year time frame. That's for
No,
damn
not at
sure.
all.
It's only been 1/4 of Trump. 1/4. That would mean there's 11 more quarters to go. There's no
No
fucking
way.
way. There's no way.
No way. Our heads are going to explode. It's
Absolutely
insane.
no way.
All right, bro. Great
Okay.
chat.
All
Enjoyed
right, good
it.
talking to you, Mark. Always a pleasure. Yeah, we'll see what Von Holland does. That's gonna be interesting. We'll see if this story stays with it. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk a little about how Doji basically sold the farm to Russians again.
No doubt. No doubt. Which could be impeachable. So let's smile about that.
We got that
Let's
word's
talk
got to be
about it.
used every day. Every
Yes,
day we got
indeed.
to use that word impeach, because we got to just plant the seed that is the end game. That's
No
impeachable.
doubt.
The constitutional stuff's impeachable. Like we'll just start stacking impeachable offenses on top of each other also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Mark.
All right. We ring the bell again tomorrow, my friend.
Okay, talk to you.
Talk at you.
Bye.
Peace.